Neville Goddard, Out of This World, Chapter 2, Assumptions Become Facts. Men believe in the reality of the external world because they do not know how to focus and condense their powers to penetrate its thin crust. This book has only one purpose: the removing of the veil of the senses, the traveling into another world. To remove the veil of the senses, we do not employ great effort. The objective world vanishes by turning our attention away from it. We have only to concentrate on the state desired in order to mentally see it. But to give it reality so that it will become an objective fact, we must focus attention upon the invisible state until it has the feeling of reality. When, through concentrated attention, our desire appears to possess the distinctiveness and feeling of reality, we have given it the right to become a visible, concrete fact. If it is difficult to control the direction of your attention while in a state akin to sleep, you may find gazing fixedly into an object very helpful. Do not look at its surface, but into and beyond any plain object such as a wall, a carpet, or any other object which possesses depth. Arrange it to return as little reflection as possible. Imagine then, in this depth, you are seeing and hearing what you want to see and hear until your attention is exclusively occupied by the imagined state. At the end of your meditation, when you awake from your controlled waking dream, you feel as though you had returned from a great distance. The visible world which you had shut out returns to consciousness, and by its very presence informs you that you have been self-deceived into believing that the object of your contemplation was real. But if you know that consciousness is the one and only reality, you will remain faithful to your vision, and by this sustained mental attitude, confirm your gift of reality and prove that you have the power to give reality to your desires, that they may become visible, concrete facts. Define your ideal and concentrate your attention upon the idea of identifying yourself with your ideal. Assume the feeling of being it, the feeling that would be yours were you already the embodiment of your ideal. Then live and act upon this conviction. This assumption, though denied by the senses, if persisted in, will become fact. You will know when you have succeeded in fixing the desired state in consciousness by simply looking mentally at the people you know. In dialogues with yourself, you are less inhibited and more sincere than in actual conversations with others. Therefore, the opportunity for self-analysis arises when you are surprised by your mental conversation with others. If you see them as you formerly saw them, you have not changed your concept of self. For all changes of concepts of self result in a changed relationship to your world. In your meditation, allow others to see you as they would see you. This new concept of self, a concrete fact, you always seem to others an embodiment of the ideal you inspire. Therefore, in meditation, when you contemplate others, you must be seen by them mentally as you would be seen by them physically were your concept of self an objective fact. That is, in meditation, you imagine that they see you expressing that which you desire to be. If you assume that you are what you want to be, your desire is fulfilled, and in fulfillment, all longing is neutralized. You cannot continue desiring what you have already realized. Your desire is not something you labor to fulfill. It is recognizing something you already possess. It is assuming the feeling of being that which you desire to be. Believing and being are one. The conceiver and his conception are one. Therefore, that which you conceive yourself to be can never be so far off as even to be near, for nearness implies separation. If thou canst believe all things are possible to him that believeth. Mark 9:23. Being is the substance of things hoped, the evidence of things not yet seen. Hebrews 11:1. If you assume that you are what you want to be, then you will see others as they are related to your assumption. If, however, it is the good of others that you desire, then in meditation you must represent them to yourself as already being that which you desire them to be. It is through desire that you rise above your present sphere, and the road from longing to fulfillment is shortened as you experience in imagination what you would experience in the flesh were you already the embodiment of the ideal you desire to be. I have stated that man has at every moment of time the choice before him which of several futures he will encounter. But the question arises, how is that possible when the experiences of man awake in the three-dimensional world are predetermined? As his observation of an event before it occurs implies, this ability to change the future will be seen if we liken the experiences of life on earth to this printed page. Man experiences events on earth singly and successfully in the same way that you are now experiencing the words on this page. Imagine that every word on this page represents a single sensory expression. To get the context to understand my meaning, you focus your vision of the first word in the upper left-hand corner and then move your focus across the page from left to right, letting it fall on the words singly and successfully. By the time your eyes reach the last word on this page, you have extracted my meaning. Suppose, however, on looking at the page with all the printed words thereon equally present, you decided to rearrange them. You could, by rearranging them, tell an entirely different story. In fact, you could tell many different stories. A dream is nothing more than uncontrolled four-dimensional thinking, or the rearrangement of both past and future sensory impressions. Man seldom dreams of events in the order in which he experiences them when awake. He usually dreams of two or more events which are separated in time, fused into a single sensory expression. Or in his dream, he so completely rearranges his single waking sensory impressions that he does not recognize them when he encounters them in his waking state. For example, I dreamed that I delivered a package to the restaurant in my apartment building. The hostess said to me, "You can't leave that there." Whereupon the elevator operator gave me a few letters, and as I thanked him for them, he in return thanked me. At this point, the night elevator operator appeared and waved a greeting to me. The following day, as I left my apartment, I picked up a few letters which had been placed at my door. On my way down, I gave the day elevator operator a tip and thanked him for taking care of my mail. Whereupon he thanked me for the tip. On my return home that day, I overheard a doorman say to a delivery man, "You can't leave that there." As I was about to take the elevator up to my apartment, I was attracted by a familiar face in the restaurant, and as I looked in, the hostess greeted me with a smile. Late that night, I escorted my dinner guests to the elevator, and as I said goodbye to them, the night operator waved goodnight to me. By simply rearranging a few of the single sensory impressions I was destined to encounter, and by fusing two or more of them into a single sensory impressions, I constructed a dream which differed quite a bit from my waking experience. When we have learned to control the movements of our attention in the four-dimensional world, we shall be able to consciously create circumstances in the 3D world. We learn this control through the waking dream, where our attention can be maintained without effort, for attention minus effort is indispensable to changing the future. We can, in a controlled waking dream, consciously construct an event which we desire to experience in the three-dimensional world. The sensory impressions we use to construct our waking dream are present realities displaced in time or the 4D world. All that we do in constructing the waking dream is to select from the vast array of sensory impressions those which, when they are properly arranged, imply that we have realized our desire. With the dream clearly defined, we relax in a chair and induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep. A state which, although bordering on sleep, leaves us in a conscious control of the movements of our attention. When we have achieved that state, we experience in imagination what we would experience in reality, were this waking dream an objective fact. In applying this technique to change the future, it is important always to remember that the only thing which occupies the mind during the waking dream is the waking dream, the predetermined action which implies the fulfillment of our desire. How the waking dream becomes physical fact is not our concern. Our acceptance of the waking dream as physical reality wills the means for its fulfillment. Let me again lay the foundation of changing the future, which is nothing more than a controlled waking dream. Define your objective. Know definitely that you want this objective. Construct an event which you believe you will encounter following the fulfillment of your desire. Something which will have the action of self predominant. An event which implies the fulfillment of your desire. Immobilize the physical body and induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep. Then mentally feel yourself right into the proposed action, imagining all the while that you are actually performing the action here and now, so that you experience in imagination what you would experience in the flesh were you now to realize your goal. Experience has convinced me that this is the perfect way to achieve my goal. However, my own many failures would convict me were I to imply that I have completely mastered the movements of my attention. I can, however, with the ancient teachers say, this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before. I press toward the mark for the prize. Philippians 3:13-14. End of the chapter. This is also a great chapter by Neville Goddard because it explains the concept of the law of assumption. We have to understand that the serial universe, multiverse, parallel realities, it doesn't matter how you call it. The reality of it is that we have many futures ahead of us and we can choose and pick which one we want. And it's not something that you necessarily have to convince yourself of, for a simple reason. Had I not shared this information with you, had you not heard of this information before, and if you were to go all your life without knowing this kind of information and not having this self-awareness of the decisions you make shaping your futures and the decisions you make with your imagination shaping your future, more specifically, you would still be doing this because that's a reality. The mind is a forerunner of all things. So even if you are not deliberately doing it, it's still happening. You are going towards a particular future because you have things in your mind, beliefs, thoughts, feelings, etc. that visions that are happening, good or bad or anything in between. What this teaching is showing us is that we can take control over it, that it is not predetermined by God, by heaven, by conditioning other than our own. So if we are to deliberately condition our minds in a particular fashion, in a particular way, and for a particular amount of time, which is perseverance, then we are able to choose the reality we live in. Now, the means and the when are not up to us. This is something that is not necessarily mentioned a lot in this chapter, but this is something we have to make peace with. We need to assume and do it for a while. We need to persevere in assuming this new state. Even Neville Goddard said at the end of this chapter that he had many failures, but he knows through his successes that this works. And even if he had not mastered this completely, because how can you master something like this? Because you are constantly facing one obstacle: your senses. And as Florence Scovel Sheen said, thinking the thoughts you want to think when your senses deny it is one of the most laborious, hardest thing to do in the world, if not the hardest. I think she said it was the hardest. And I tend to agree. Because if you are right now, for example, and I will give you an extreme example. You're a man or a woman. You want to be with a man or a woman. Whatever your sexual orientation is, whatever your tastes are. And this man or woman happens to be someone you have never met. And what I mean by meeting is you have never talked to them. They might be someone in your outer entourage. It might be maybe one of your friends know them. And maybe they don't necessarily even live in your town, but just happen to pass through your town every now and then. They caught your eye, you've heard of them, and you, for whatever reason, find yourself attracted to them and wanting to be with them. And that's okay. That's amazing. That's great. You would have to assume that this person that does not live in your town, that does not necessarily know who you are, that you have never spoken to, is with you, is your lover, is your intimate partner. You would have to assume that you already have a relationship with them in your imagination. And that's why it's hard. Why? Because assuming this state of mind would have to assume this state of mind for some period of time until this actually happens in your 3D reality. So in this time lag, in this delay of time, when you are starting to imagine this state of mind, being with this person and having them in your 3D reality, you will have a world of obstacles, quote unquote, and your senses will deny it. So you would have to live every day in your imagination while living in this 3D reality and not get affected, quote unquote, by what you see, which is in your 3D reality the lack of your state having been translated yet. And that's why it's hard. And that's why perseverance is the most important thing when it comes to manifesting. Because if you cannot persevere in actually not believing is not important. It's not at all important. Yes, you need to believe that your thoughts create and your imaginal acts create. Yes, you need to believe, but when you get into the drowsy state of mind, in a meditative state, and when you imagine, there is no believing. You cannot believe in something you already have. Because you already have it. You don't need to have belief. I'm right now recording this on my computer with my microphone. I have my computer, I have my microphone. Right now, I can see it, I can feel it. I know this. I know I have them. There's no belief there. There's nothing to believe in. So when you close your eyes and when you get in a passive state of body and mind, and you imagine the state you want to embody, after a while, it will feel real. Even from the first time, it can feel real. Why? Because you have shut your senses, because you're in a drowsy state of mind and or meditative state of mind, which limits the distraction of the outer world. So when you visualize, it feels real. And how it feels real? Because your body and your emotion will react accordingly. And don't get me wrong, you don't need to be ecstatic about it, but there will be a reaction. When Neville Goddard say feeling is the secret, it means like just feeling as you already have it. And feeling that you have something, like if you're in a relationship, you will not be happy 100% of the time, but you know you have it. It's more of the knowing and the feeling you already have it than being a particular emotion, be it joy, sadness, etc. It's just feeling you have it, if it makes sense. But I digress, but this is important nonetheless. So to think the thoughts of being with this person, regardless of what you see in the outer world, that is the challenge, quote unquote. And of course, you can manifest being good at it and feeling good at it, but generally speaking, as a beginner, this is what you will face. You will live in a world where you will not be with this person yet, even though you started visualizing. Now, it can happen very fast. It can happen after a few days, after a few weeks, etc. But because if you are a beginner, and if you are new to this, unless you are a natural at it, but for most people, if you need to visualize it for a while until it feels real, you need to visualize it until it feels so good, and you feel, what I mean by so good, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about joy necessarily. You feel satisfied, fulfilled with it. It means the seed has been planted. And sustain it until you see it in your 3D reality. That's the challenge. And obviously it gets easier, because if you do it on a daily basis, let's say you visualize it, it will feel real. It will definitely feel real, and your subconscious mind will be implanted, and you won't necessarily react anymore. You want to react positively when signs are pointing in the right direction. But if there's no signs, or if your senses deny it, just don't think about it. Just distract yourself. Place your attention on the living in the end part, which is being with that person. Neville Goddard said you cannot be a double-minded man. You cannot live in the end and also think you don't have it. You know what I mean? So if you spend your time, which will happen as a beginner, between living in the end and reacting negatively because the sense denied, and you go back and forth, you might have partial results, you might be frustrated and things of that nature. So focus. Your dominant thoughts, your dominant feeling should be living in the end. Doesn't mean that you have to be 100% always living in the end. It means that this is your dominant feeling, that you spend more time actually approving this vision than actually denying, so to speak. But I digress. But it was important for me to mention that assumptions become fact this way through perseverance. And the perseverance will be challenged by things that your senses deny. So always revert back to your affirming, to your visualization, scripting, etc. Whenever you see things that would tend to make you react, or you have thoughts that are misaligned, don't let them finish. Replace them on the spot with an affirmative thought that is aligned with your vision. You don't need to stop everything and visualize, although you can, that's great too. But it takes generally longer to close your eyes and visualize, and you want to visualize when your mind is not distracted. But affirmation is a great go-to solution. So for example, I'm keeping the example of the specific person. If you are to react to something, you know you're about to react, just affirm, I am with this person, I am with Charlotte, I am with Charles, I am with Michael, I am with Serena. Just affirm it. Just say it a couple times and just go back to whatever you're doing. Generally speaking, that's enough. If you are getting overwhelmed, just stop whatever you're doing and affirm more, but in a gentle manner. Remember, as Neville Goddard said at the beginning of the chapter, it's concentrated effort, concentrated attention, but minimal effort. Why this is important? You don't want to force it, because when you force it, when you put too much effort and becomes like a chore and you're pushing too much, it's kind of like you're gonna break it, so to speak, and you kind of manifest the opposite of what you're forcing. You know what I mean? So you always want to be lighthearted about this. That's why relaxation, and this is a subject for another day, but relaxation is always important. Stay as composed, as poised, and as relaxed as you possibly can. Do not take things so seriously. Keep it light. Don't, because you react, oh my god, this is fucked up, I ruined everything. No, just relax and just affirm. And just affirm. Always stay composed. And that's it for today. I don't want to digress even more. I hope it was helpful. Thank you so much for listening. I am Sebastian, your manifestation mindset meditation coach. If you want more information on me and my coaching availability, please check the description box below. Please like, share, and subscribe for more of this type of content. Thank you so much, and I'll see you very soon.